Hello everyone, welcome to Aptitude Academy for Sales Officers. Since the UPSC Prelims 2024 is very near, I hope all of you are preparing well for your exam and I wish you all the very best for your exam. And as usual, today I am here for a daily news and editorial analysis for the 5th and 6th of March 2024. And this editorial analysis is going to be important for all the government exams in India and especially for the UPSC CAC 2024. So without further delay, let us begin the analysis.
Territorial Sea, international law visualized. The law of the sea divides the ocean into zones, where states have sovereign rights or jurisdictional authority. Internal waters are anything landward of the baselines, such as harbors, river mouths, or bays, and are subject to the coastal state's sovereignty. On the other hand, all waters seaward of the baselines are subject to the coastal state's sovereignty and are encompassed under its sovereign rights or jurisdiction, like the contiguous zone, the continental shelf, the exclusive economic zone, and the territorial sea. International law recognizes a coastal state's right to exercise jurisdiction over a 12 nautical mile stretch of water near its coast, known as the territorial sea or territorial waters. The coastal state's sovereignty over its territorial seas extends to the sky above and the seabed under the territorial sea, and it is restricted by foreign vessels' right of innocent passage through the territorial sea. The passage is no longer considered innocent when the foreign vessel's passage threatens the coastal state's peace, good order, or security, such as fishing, major pollution, or research. In this case, the coastal state may request the foreign vessel's departure from the territorial sea, or even exercise enforcement jurisdiction regarding matters that have already enacted legislation, like the safety of navigation, conservation of living resources, and violations of customs or immigration laws.
Recently, India applied for rights to explore the Indian Ocean region beyond its jurisdiction, and the right demanded by India is to explore the region which is called the Afanasy Nikitin Seamount. So this is the island which is located in the Indian Ocean region. So India is basically demanding to explore these regions in the Indian Ocean region. So in the exam you might be asked that the Afanasy Nikitin island recently seen in news is located in which ocean? So your answer should be in the Indian Ocean. Okay, so this is the point. And India's interest is fueled by the concerns over the Chinese vessels conducting the reconnaissance there. So the Chinese vessel is basically conducting the military exercises, and the Chinese vessels are passing through the Indian Ocean region. So for this reason, India is demanding the rights to explore the Nikitin Seamount. So this is the Nikitin Seamount, and along with the application for the AN Seamount, India has also applied for the permission to explore the 𝐒𝐫𝐢 𝐍𝐢𝐤𝐷 in the central Indian Ocean region. So the 𝐒𝐿𝐫𝐢 𝐍𝐢𝐤 is also located in the central central Indian island region. So the 𝐒𝐿𝐫𝐢 𝐍𝐢𝐤 is also located here. Okay, so ये points आपको याद रखना है for the mapping perspective. And the Nikitin Seamount is located 3000 km away from the mainland India. So this is the distance of the Nikitin island from India, and this Nikitin island is 400 meter long and 150 kilometer wide. So this is basically uninhabited area. Okay, so there is no population or there no people resides in the Nikitin Seamount. Okay, so this is an important point. And so far as the islands in the Indian Ocean region is concerned, there are many islands. So in UPSC, especially the islands in the Indian Ocean is asked. Okay, so you have to know which islands are located where in the Indian Ocean region. So Seychelles is here. Seychelles is located in the Arabian Sea, and there is Maldives. There is Assumption Island here. So Assumption Island is located between the Africa and the Madagascar. Okay, and there is Agalega Islands here. There is Diego Garcia. So Diego Garcia is basically an overseas territory of UK. Okay, and there is Mauritius here. So you have to know the locations. You might be asked in UPSC, arrange the following places or the following islands located in the Indian Ocean region from north to south. So you have to be able to arrange them from north to south or east to west. Okay, so you have to remember the mapping of the Indian Ocean region. Okay, so these are the important islands located in the Indian Ocean region, and this was also the context of the news. Now let us understand about the maritime zones in detail. So before we understand about the maritime zones or different maritime zones, you need to understand the difference between the seamount and the 𝐶𝐲. Okay, so these are the different structures which are found in the ocean beds. And the first important structure is the seamount. Seamount is basically a short form of the sea mountains. So the sea mountains are called the seamount. Okay, so the seamount are basically the mountains which are located in the ocean, and there is volcanic island which is created by the volcano, and there is marine erosion. So the marine erosion occurs in the ocean region. So the erosion of the water causes the island to form. So this is the island which is formed due to the marine erosion, and there is the 𝐶𝐲. So 𝐶𝐲 and the seamount are basically same type of landforms, but the only difference between the seamount and the 𝐶𝐲 is that the 𝐶𝐲 has the flat base. So this is the 𝐶𝐲, and the seamount has peak base. So the seamount has the sharp top. Okay, so the shape of seamount is like this, and 𝐶𝐲 is like this. So 𝐶𝐲 is basically a plateau shaped island or the plateau shaped mountain which is found in the ocean region. So you have to know these difference. Now talking about different maritime zones, there are different maritime zones, and the distance of the maritime zones is measured from the baseline, and the baseline is the reference point of measuring the different maritime areas in the ocean, and this is the baseline, and which is located near the shore. Okay, and the internal water is there, and internal water is basically the water which is located inside the baseline. So in the exam you might be asked that the internal waters is located to which side of the baseline. Okay, you have to know that the internal water is located inside the baseline, okay, towards the shore, and there is territorial water here. So territorial water means the water which is located 12 nautical miles away from the baseline. Okay, so this is the baseline, and the territorial water is located 12 nautical miles away from the baseline. And then comes the contiguous zone. So contiguous zone is the area which is located 24 nautical miles away from the baseline. So you have to know the numbers as well. So the contiguous zone is located in 24 nautical miles away from the baseline, and there is the exclusive economic zone, okay, where the sovereign country has right to explore or right to do the economic activities here, and this exclusive economic zone is located 200 nautical miles away from the baseline. Okay, so this is an important point. And there is continental shelf. So continental shelf is very important for any country, because the continental shelf includes all these regions: territorial sea, contiguous zone, exclusive economic zones. All these are included in the continental shelf. Okay, so for this reason continental shelf is very important, and the continental shelf basically starts from the baseline and it ends at the cliff. So there is a cliff here. Okay, so this cliff is the ending line of this continental shelf, and from this cliff there is start of continental slope. So this is continental slope. Okay, so the continental slope is the area where there is sudden decrease of height of the ocean belt. Okay, so you can see there is sudden drop of the height of this region. So this is the continental slope, and this is the continental shelf. Okay, so you have to know this point. So these are the important points that you need to know about the different maritime zones, and these are the different maritime zones. So these are the different maritime zones. Now let us understand about the different facts about the maritime zones and the details about the maritime zones. So as we just discussed, the maritime zone contains different parts which includes the baseline, internal waters, the territorial sea, the exclusive economic zones, etc. And the baseline is basically the reference point to measure the maritime zones. Okay, so baseline, from the baseline we measure the distance of different the maritime zones we discussed in the picture. So we discussed these things in the picture. And there is internal waters. So internal waters is basically the waters on the landward side of the baseline. So we discussed about it as well. So the water body which is located towards the shore from the baseline is called the internal waters, and each coastal state has full sovereignty over the internal waters. So internal waters में country का exclusive right रहता है, ठीक है. So you have to know about it. And the examples of the internal waters are the bays, ports, inlets, rivers and even the lakes. So exam में ये पूछा जा सकता है कि which of the following is contained in the internal waters. So you have to know that the bays, ठीक है, ports, inlets, water body or rivers or even the estuaries are contained in the internal waters, ठीक है. So these are the examples of the internal waters, and there is no right of innocent passes. So innocent passes means the right of the countries to pass through the territory of another country without carrying any arms. So if the ship from another country is passing through the internal waters of another country without carrying any arms, so that passage of the ship through the internal water of another country would be called the right of innocent passes. So for instance, if the China's vessel is passing through the water body which is located near the coastal India, then the passage of that vessel in the Indian Ocean would be called the innocent passage. So the innocent passage means the passage of any vessels without carrying any arms and ammunition. So you have to remember one point, that there is no right of innocent passage in the internal waters. So even the countries of other ship which does not carry the ammunition cannot pass through the internal waters of other country. So this is an important point. And talking about the territorial sea, the territorial sea extends seaward up to 12 nautical miles. So we discussed about it. So these are some facts about the baseline, internal waters and territorial sea. Now let us discuss about the other maritime zones. So apart from the territorial waters and the baseline, there are the contiguous zone, exclusive economic zones, continental shelf, etc. And the contiguous zone basically extends 24 nautical miles away from the baseline. So the contiguous zone is located 24 nautical miles away from the baseline, and intermediate zone between the territorial sea and high seas. So contiguous zone is basically sandwiched between the high seas and the territorial sea, ठीक है. And there is exclusive economic zone, and we discussed about it. It is located 200 nautical miles away from the baseline. And there is continental shelf. So continental shelf is basically the edge of the continent. So continental shelf is basically the end of the continent, because after the continental shelf there is start of the ocean water body, ठीक है. So for this reason continental shelf is also called the edge of the continent. And the continental shelf basically extends from the baseline to the drop off point, which is called the shelf break, ठीक है. So continental slope is basically located between the drop off point and the ocean floor, ठीक है. And the high seas is basically the ocean surface and the water column beyond the exclusive economic zone, ठीक है. So the high seas are located beyond the exclusive economic zones. So exclusive economic zones is located 200 nautical miles away from the baseline, and beyond this 200 nautical mile there is the high seas. And the high seas are called the common heritage of all mankind. So this point is very important. So in the exam you might be asked that which of the following maritime zones are called the common heritage of all mankind. So you have to know that the high seas are called the common heritage of all mankind, because in the high seas the countries can perform any economic activities, ठीक है. So the right of innocent passage, even other military activities are allowed in the high seas. So these are all important facts about the maritime zones. And as we all know, the maritime zones are basically governed by the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. So for this reason we must understand what is UNCLOS and its detail. So let us understand about them in detail. The United Nations Convention of Law of Seas was basically started in 1982. So this convention was signed in 1982, and UNCLOS is international treaty that provides regulatory framework for the use of world seas and ocean. So the right to use the world seas and oceans are provided under the UNCLOS, and it lays down the comprehensive regime and order in the world's oceans and seas, establishing the rules governing the all uses and the oceans. So how the rules in the ocean is to be governed is basically determined by United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, and it enshrines the notion that all problems of ocean space are closely interrelated and that needs to be addressed as a whole. So the all oceans, so this UNCLOS was basically established on the belief that all problems of the ocean, which is the ocean space, are basically interrelated, okay, and that needs to be addressed as a whole. So the UNCLOS basically sees all the water bodies same, and for this reason UNCLOS believes that all the water bodies around the world should be governed as a whole. And so far as ratification of this UNCLOS is concerned, it was opened for signature in December 1982, and the convention has been ratified by 168 parties, which includes 167 states, of which 164 are United Nations members, plus there is United Nations observer state, which is the Palestine. So Palestine is also there, and there is the Cook Islands and the New. Okay, so Cook Islands are news. Are also part of this United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, and there is European Union. Okay, so these are all members of the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, and there is additional 14 UN member states having signed but not ratified the convention. So 14 states are still there which have signed it, but they have not ratified it. That means if a country has signed a treaty but the country's government has not approved of that treaty, okay, so that would be called the unratified convention. So this is the status of ratification of the UNCLOS, and the India ratified United Nations Law on Seas in 1995, and the US has failed to do so far. That means India is a member of United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, okay, but United States is still not a member of the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. And as for India's territorial waters, the Continental Self-Exclusive Economic Zone and other Maritime Zones Act of 1976, all foreign ships other than the warships including submarines and other water vehicles shall enjoy the right of innocent passage through the territorial waters. So that means we discussed about it. What is the territorial water? Territorial water are the bodies which are located inward from the baseline. So in this territorial water region, there is right of innocent passage. Okay, so right of innocent passage is there as per the Territorial Waters Continental Self-Exclusive Economic Zone and others Maritime Act. Okay, as per this act, there is this provision. And innocent passage, we discussed about it. It is the passage that is not prejudicial to the peace, good order and the security of India. So any ship, if that is passing through the India or the Indian Ocean region, if that does not pose any threat to India, then that would be called innocent passage. So the innocent passage clause is there in this Territorial Waters and Continental Self-Exclusive Economic Zones Act. So these are all important facts about the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. So in the exam you might be asked that the right of innocent passage is contained under which act? Then your answer should be the Territorial Waters Continental Self-Exclusive Economic Zones and other Maritime Zone Act of 1976. So these were all facts about the UNCLOS and the right of innocent passage. Now moving on to UPSC Civil Services PYQ, which was asked from the similar topic. UPSC in 2021 asked the question related to the exploration rights in the Indian Ocean region, and the question was, they consider the following statements. Statement 1 is the Global Ocean Commission grants licenses for the seabed exploration and the mining in the international water. Okay, so this statement is incorrect because not the Global Ocean Commission but the International Seabed Authority. International Seabed Authority basically grants the right of the seabed exploration to other countries. So not the Global Ocean Commission but the International Seabed Authority, which falls under UNCLOS. So this International Seabed Authority was founded under the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, basically grants the licenses to the countries to explore the minerals in the international waters. And the statement 2 is the India has received licenses for the seabed mineral exploration in international waters. So statement 2 is correct because India has received the exploration right for the minerals in the Indian Ocean region in many instances. So recently as well, India has applied for the license for the exploration rights in the Indian Ocean region. And the statement 3 is rare earth minerals are present on the sea floor in the international waters. So this is also correct because the rare earth metals, which includes the cobalt, nickel, etc., are present in the international waters. And these rare earth minerals are basically contained in the polymetallic nodules. So polymetallic nodules are basically rich in the rare earth minerals, which includes the cobalt, nickel, etc. So for this reason, the international seabed is very important. So for this reason, different countries are demanding for the exploration rights in the different region in the oceans. For instance, China is demanding the exclusive rights to explore the South China Sea. And India is also demanding the rights to explore in the Indian Ocean region. So in this question, the statement 1 is incorrect and statement 2 and statement 3 are correct. So the answer is B, which is 2 and 3. Okay, so this type of question is asked in UPSC. Now moving on to next topic of discussion for today.
An island has become the center of conflict between India and Sri Lanka. The island in focus is the Katchatheevu Island. The issue began in pre-independence India. Till date, it is one that has not been resolved between the two South Asian nations. So where is this island? Katchatheevu is an uninhabited offshore island. It is located in the Palk Strait. It was formed in the 14th century due to volcanic eruptions. During the British rule, it was jointly administered by India and Sri Lanka.
India has been at the forefront of providing aid and assistance to Sri Lanka at a time when the island nation faces its worst ever economic crisis. However, leaders here in Tamil Nadu, in the southern Indian state, including the Chief Minister, feel that this is the most opportune moment for India to find a permanent solution to a lingering issue of the Katchatheevu, an uninhabited island that remains under Sri Lanka's control.
Recently, an article related to the Katchatheevu island appeared in The Hindu, and in this context, this topic becomes important for the mapping in UPSC prelims and also for the GS paper 2 of UPSC mains. And under GS paper 2, this topic caters to the syllabus international relation. And in this topic, we are going to discuss about the Katchatheevu island. We'll do the mapping of this island, and then we'll discuss the disputes and contention between the India and the Sri Lanka related to this island. Then lastly, we'll discuss the maritime disputes of India with the neighboring countries. So let us begin the analysis. So far as the Katchatheevu island is concerned, this Katchatheevu island is basically 285-acre uninhabited island in the Palk Strait. So this is the Palk Strait. Okay. So Palk Strait is located between India and Sri Lanka, and this is the Mannar Island, and this is the location of the Katchatheevu island. Okay. So this is basically a disputed region between India and Sri Lanka, and this is Gulf of Mannar, and this is Rameswaram. Okay. So you have to know the maps where they are located, and students often get confused with the Gulf of Mannar and the Palk Strait. Okay. So Palk Strait is basically located here and Gulf of Mannar is here. Students think that this is the Gulf of Mannar and this is Palk Strait. No, this is the Palk Strait and this is Gulf of Mannar. And this Katchatheevu island is not suitable for the habitation. Okay. For this reason, people do not reside in the Katchatheevu island, and there is only one structure in the Katchatheevu island, which is the St. Anthony's Church. Okay. So St. Anthony's Church is there, and the people from both countries, India and Sri Lanka, goes there for the religious activities. So these were all facts about the Katchatheevu island and the mapping of Katchatheevu island. Now let us discuss about the disputes and the chronology of the disputes between the India and islands so far as the Katchatheevu island is concerned. So far as the disputes between the India and Sri Lanka in the Katchatheevu island is concerned, a dispute is basically over the ownership rights in the Katchatheevu island, because the both countries were demanding for the rights in the Katchatheevu island since the British period. So even during the British period, when there was Madras presidency in the south, both the countries demanded the ownership rights. But in 1974, an agreement, which is the Indo-Sri Lanka Maritime Agreement, was signed, under which India transferred the rights of this Katchatheevu island to Sri Lanka. Okay. So this is important. But in 1976, another agreement was signed between these two countries, and according to this agreement, both the countries could not do economic activities near the island. So that means the fishing activities were prohibited in the exclusive economic zones of these two countries. So this agreement again created the debate whether these two countries can have the rights in the Katchatheevu island or not, because India thought that India can do the economic activities in Katchatheevu, and the Sri Lanka also thought that they can do the economic activities in the Katchatheevu island. So basically there was differing interpretation of the treaty between India and Sri Lanka. So for this reason there was dispute over the ownership right of this Katchatheevu island, and in the recent years the dispute between two countries have started again, because many fishermen from India have been arrested by the Sri Lankan police. So for this reason dispute between these two countries over the Katchatheevu island is arising again. So these were important facts. So these were the important facts about the disputes between the India and the Sri Lanka over the Katchatheevu island. And India also has the other disputes with other countries as well, so far as the international or the maritime boundary is concerned. Now let us see what are the other debates that India has with the other countries. From UPSC prelims and mains perspective, the maritime disputes of India with other countries are important, and we just discussed about the Katchatheevu island, which is the dispute between India and Sri Lanka, and we have to know about other disputes as well. And the most prominent dispute between India and neighboring countries so far as the maritime dispute is concerned is with the Pakistan and Bangladesh. So with Pakistan there is a dispute of demarcation in the Sir Creek region. So this is the Sir Creek region, and in this Sir Creek there are many demarcated zones. Okay? So there are many demarcated islands. So these small islands are claimed by both the countries, which are India and Pakistan. So Sir Creek is basically the boundary dispute between India and Pakistan. And other important dispute is about the 𝐶 Island. So 𝐶 Island is the island which is located in Bay of Bengal. Okay. And both the countries, Bangladesh and India, demands for rights in the 𝐶 Island, but the Permanent Court of Arbitration has ruled in favor of Bangladesh. So as per PCA, which is the Permanent Court of Arbitration, has exclusive right of Bangladesh in the 𝐶 Island. So in the exam you might be asked the question like, match the following islands recently seen in news with the countries, and in the options you might be given like 𝐶 Island, the Katchatheevu Island, Sir Creek, etc. And in the options the names of the countries might be given. So you have to know about the disputed regions between India with the other countries. So these were all disputes between India and neighboring countries. Now moving on to next topic of discussion for today. Recently the Competition Commission of India has approved the acquisition of shares of MG Motor India Private Limited by Indo-Age India Fund under the Large Value Fund scheme. So for this reason we need to understand what is Large Value Fund, the alternative investment funds, etc. for the UPSC prelims perspective. And so far as the Large Value Fund is concerned, it is an alternative investment fund, and in this Large Value Fund every investor is an accredited investor. So all investors are important in the large value funds, and the minimum amount of investment that is to be made in the large value fund is 70 crore. So every investor must make an investment of 70 crore in the large value fund to be called the large value funds. So for this reason this type of fund is called the large value fund, because the minimum amount of fund which is invested by the investors is 70 crore. And the alternative investment fund is basically the privately pooled or collective investment fund which is incorporated in India for the investment purposes. So the alternative investment fund is basically a privately pooled fund, and there are three categories of alternative investment funds as per the SEBI rules. So these are the category 1, category 2 and category 3. And the category 1 alternative investment funds basically invest in startups, small and medium enterprises which are SMEs, and socially beneficial sectors like infrastructure. So these are the areas where the category 1 AIF invest, and this includes the infrastructure funds, the venture capital funds, angel funds and the social venture funds. So you have to know which categories of the funds falls under the category 1 AIF. So in the exam you might be asked that the angel funds falls under which category of AIF. So you have to know that angel funds, capital funds, venture capital funds, infrastructure funds and social venture funds, and under category 2 falls the funds of funds, debt funds and private equity funds. So these three types of funds falls under the category 2 of AIF, and the third category is basically aimed to invest for the short term investment returns. So for the short term category 3 AIF is there, and this category 3 basically utilizes the complex trading strategies. Okay, so trading is used for investing under this category 3 AIF, and under this category 3 AIF, hedge funds, private investment funds in the private equity funds falls. So these were all facts about the alternative investment funds, and this was also the last topic of discussion for today. And today we discussed about 3 important topics, and all these 3 topics are going to be important for all the government exams in India and the UPSC. And having said that, today as well I have got an quote of the day for you. Now let us look at the quote that I have got for you. The quote of the day for today is, balance is not something you find, it's something you create. So this quote is very relevant for the UPSC aspirants, because balance in work, life and the studies are very important. So you have to have a balance between your personal life, your work life and the studies to manage your time effectively. So for this reason, this quote is very relevant for all the aspirants in India. So with that quote, I am concluding today's session. We'll meet again in the next video. Till then, take care.